I'd like to call the Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019 public hearing for the City of Tampa's Barrio Latino Commission to order. Welcome, everyone. I'm John Thompson, Chair of the Commission. If you are here to present the project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, and wall sections. Staff presents staff report. We will then ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the city ordinance, Chapter 27 of City Zoning Code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, design review comments, and the testimony given at the public hearing. The BLC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones, and we'll introduce commissioners from the left.
Good morning, I'm Christopher Vela.
Good morning, I'm Eric Schiller.
Good morning, Juan Ricardes.
Good morning, Leaving Win.
And legal.
Rebecca Kurt.
And I'd like to also introduce staff: Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, and Beverly Jusak are here today. We have, first item is the reading of the minutes from the December 18th, 2018 BLC meeting. We need a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay, meeting minutes are done. For announcements.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to our first meeting of 2019. You have been provided the 2019 calendar for the meetings. If you see any issues on there that you know of, perhaps that you might be out of town or have a conflict with one of the meetings, just please let the staff know in advance so we can ensure that we have a quorum for our meetings within the calendar year. Additionally, I do have the list of staff reports or staff approvals to place into the record. I'll provide that to Beverly now. And with that, there are no continuations under Roman numeral 6. So we can move to the conflict of interest and ex parte communication. I'll have Ron come up to handle that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. As Dennis stated, under conflicts of interest and ex parte communication, if any commissioners wish to put something on the record, they may do so at this time.
For the BLC 19-22, our office is involved with that case, so I will recuse myself from that presentation and hand over the gavel.
So at that time, you could exit the room, and our Vice Chair will take over the meeting.
Thank you. Chairman, before you exit the room at that time, you'll have to, I know you've already done it, but as part of the record of that case, if you could, again, state the basis for your recusal.
Sure.
And then you're free to leave.
Thank you.
So at this time, we're ready for the swear-in. Ms. Hvac will swear everybody that wishes to testify. Please stand up and raise your right hand. I do. Moving to the first case on the agenda is BLC 19-04 for the address of 1306 East Columbus Drive It's a vacant parcel currently. It's under the YC2 zoning classification. The request is new construction for a duplex. Attached to that is a variance request for a special street setback. When I come up and do the staff report, I'll be a little bit more diligent in exactly what they're asking for, what the existing condition is, and what they're moving forward with on that. I've asked the applicant to do a complete presentation. He's going to start with the site plan and go all the way through, and then the board could ask questions just dealing with the variance. Have a motion on the variance. If the motion goes forward, then you could go into the certificate of appropriateness for the new construction. Starting with Sanborn map. North is up. In 1929, Columbus Drive was Michigan Avenue. Property in question is in the green box here. You see the variety of setbacks along the street. At the time, in 1929, there wasn't an alley that run to the rear of the property to the east and the west. Currently, there is no alley, so the automobile access will be off of Columbus Drive, which is the primary street coming into the property. There is one historic property to the west on this block here. This is a non-contributing structure. And then you see a variety of setbacks along Columbus Drive here. And Mr. Gibbons will give you some additional photos. This is the property in question, the vacant parcel. There are some trees on site. Natural Resources has already engaged into the process and gave direction. What they're presenting today is consistent with Natural Resources. This is the abutting property, future development site. This is to the west. As the aerial showed, and this coming off of Columbus Drive, this is a non-contributing structure. That's to the east. Directly across the street was a structure that was relocated through FDOT, and this board assisted in the placement of this structure, and you see the setback from the sidewalk for this structure. This is looking down Columbus Drive to the east. And to conclude, this is looking down Columbus Drive to the west. This is the structure that I called out on the Sanborn and on the aerial that shows the setback to the contributing structure that's along that block face. And then you see some other contributing structures and the setbacks that are established on Columbus Drive currently. With that, I'm going to pass it to Joe Gibbons, and he's going to do his presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joe Gibbons, Gulf Bay Builders, 5020 North Coolidge Avenue, Tampa, 33614. I am the applicant for the project. Starting with the site plan. As Ron had indicated, part of this process is also for a variance. Our original site plan had the structure moved back quite a bit, and after reviewing photographs, the aerials, site visits, met with Ron, and we determined that would best suit the fabric of Columbus Drive to pull the structure forward to be in line with this existing contributing structure that's to the west. And I do have some photos I'd like to share. Okay, so this is our subject property here. That's just to the east of this contributing structure. And after our surveyors went out, they determined that this front porch setback was approximately 3.5 feet. And so when we revised our site plan that I'm presenting this morning, we've brought this up to 4 feet. That's to the front porch. stem wall. And then we've proposed to have the apron come off Columbus with ribbon drive to come back with the proposed parking in the rear of the structure. That would be concrete with appropriate scoring, and then installing a new sidewalk across the front of the property, there again with the appropriate concrete scoring. The elevation would be proposed at finished floor elevations about 24 inches, which is the same as what the structure to the west is. Moving into the structure, proposed structure. It is a duplex, and I got it. And this is a proposed structure that I have previously submitted to the BLC on a separate property, and at that one I was asked to kind of come up with a variation for the front door to get some separation from the corner to the front door to get some additional siding in here, which I worked with my designer and architect and engineer, and we were able to achieve that. And then we've also added a double hung window centered above the relocated front door here. And then moving on, we've got some brick columns on the first floor with matching just some frame columns above. One of the other suggestions from a previous presentation, we had a separation wall on the previous project, and so we've eliminated that wall and just incorporated a 42-inch high railing that would match the rest of the railings on the structure. And then adding some of the brick columns on the sides of the building. So this is a structure that we built in another historic part of the city that has these, the building's built on stem wall, and where we have these proposed columns, I can show you on the site plan. Along the sides here, those would indicate these brick-faced columns on the sides and across the rear. This shows where we moved the door over to accommodate some siding between the corner of the building and the front door. We did add this double hung window above the front door, and we've got the 4-inch concrete cap on the columns on the first floor, the exposed rafter tails that are 24-inch on center. We do have the 2x8 barge rafters on the gable ends on the front. The windows are a Geldwin sightline window that is a aluminum-clad wood window. It does meet the hurricane impact, so we don't have to worry about any grommets or things like that for hurricane protection. The siding itself is the Hardy smooth 7 1/4, and then all of the trim boards are the Artisan, which I have samples with me today. And we also, in a previous presentation, took into consideration some relocating of some fixed glass windows that are in the stairwell that leads up to the second floor, so we've added these windows. The trim around the windows, we incorporate again the Hardy Artisan trim with crown molding. depiction of how we incorporate the crown and the sill, the apron. The hardware, we use the Schlage Century handle sets. The front door is a Therma-Tru full glass. And then the roof, which I have with me also, is the GAF Timberline shingle. And we're still working on the final colors with staff, but, from what we have to work with. But we're proposing kind of the gray tone with either the gray accent or the kind of this reddish accent with a charcoal roof. So with that concludes my presentation of 1306 East Columbus. Okay. So the variance request from the site plan presented, this was the original that I'd presented to staff, where during some preliminary meetings with other city staff, it was determined that Columbus Drive is what's called a special road, and typically they want 46 feet from the center line of the road to the front setback. And after talking with Ron and then Ryan from city staff, we determined that we wanted to ask for the variance just to bring that up in line with all of the other structures that make up the historic fabric of Columbus, both along the north side of Columbus heading west, and then of course everything that's on the south side of Columbus heading west as well. One of the other structures that we looked at was Ron had showed in his opening statement. This is directly across the street, and it appears to be a multifamily. Their front yard setback from the back corner of the sidewalk to this brick column was approximately 5 feet. And in ours, we are asking for the 4 feet, a quarter inch. Apparently Columbus isn't perfectly straight. On the one side it's 4 1/4, the other side's about 4 1/8 from the front yard setback. So with that, this kind of just gave the feel of I guess, suburbia, and we wanted to make to blend it with the fabric of the existing neighborhood and the existing structures, contributing structures along Columbus Drive.
Go ahead and read these into the record or paraphrase.
This is the statement of variance hardship that was submitted to Acela. And so the intent of the variance request is to maintain the historic fabric of the existing setbacks of the surrounding structures. The hardship is that we wanted to maintain that historical fabric of Columbus Drive. The variance will keep in harmony with the historical lay of the land as it is now, by allowing the proposed structure to, with the setback reduction, to coincide with all of the existing contributed structures along Columbus. And of course the intent is to maintain the historic setbacks along Columbus. With that.
Commissioners, at this time, I would request that you dive into the variance first. As he showed on 2 different site plans, initially he showed the structure back at 46 feet, and then working with land development and preservation, we moved it up to be more consistent with the historic fabric established on Columbus Drive. The request is from 46 feet to 3 foot with an encroachment for 1 foot for eaves and gutters. The language here, the 46 feet is because it's a special street, Columbus Drive is, and under Chapter 27, 160 has to take the measurement from the center line. In working with land development, there's another landmark that you could use as the front yard property line. So that's where he went for the 3 foot. So it's a reduction to 3 foot, or you could tie it to the site plan that was presented, because he did push it back from the 3 foot that he'd advertised. He asked for an additional 4 foot and change. So on the site plan that he's presenting to you today, the structure is set back about 4 foot from the front property line. And I'm here to answer any questions for the variance, and if the variance passes, then we could go into the CA.
Thank you, Ron. Let's see, so we will afford any opportunity for public comment on the variance, but I don't see anybody here. Oh, there is. It is public comment time.
John Marsh, City of Tampa, Planning Division, Transportation Review. I do have a comment I would like to request. If you pass the variance, that you put a condition that it be coordinated with the City of Tampa Transportation Engineer. We have been tasked by the Transportation Division to start watching the special street setbacks a little more carefully now. And the reason is, I understand that you're looking at the street setbacks from the basis of urban design and continuity with the architectural fabric. But the original code provision on there's a list of special street setbacks were originally to allow for future right-of-way expansion in case the roads were widening. Now, many of these special street setbacks have been kind of institutionalized and are no longer relevant, and some of them are actually going to happen. And the transportation engineer is the person that knows that. I do believe because this is Chapter 27 and not Chapter 22, you can allow it to go forward, but I believe there's some sort of waiver process for the applicant if there is a conflict. So to make a long story short, if you would just make it contingent upon coordination with the transportation engineer to make sure there's no surprises for the applicant down the road.
Thank you. Question to you regarding that. Does the variance request and putting the building further forward on the lot, does that create a potential problem for the owner in the future, where if the street wanted to be expanded, they wouldn't have the ability to defend against that?
I really don't know the answer to that question. We were surprised there's even a waiver that exists for this that apparently has been developed. It's more of a legal question.
Rebecca Kurt, Legal Department. What's before you is, my understanding has been determined, the appropriate process from the zoning administrator. Therefore, I would suggest that you apply the typical variance criteria to Chapter 27. If there's another requirement somewhere else in the code, this would not waive that, and they would still have to meet that. But I don't think that you should make this contingent upon anything else.
Okay.
If there's something else there, they'll still have to meet it. But you should concentrate on the request that's before you, which is Chapter 27, and the city internally will have to work out whatever other requirements there are. But you should just grant or not grant
Okay.
what's before you. And while I am speaking, I just want to clarify that it says it's from 46 feet to 3 feet, but when you're making your motion, you should, if you grant it, you should clarify that it's 46 feet from the center line and 3 feet from the front of the property, because that's not actually written down in the request that's before you.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will take questions from the commissioners. Any questions, starting on the left?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So to clarify, your setback from your property line is 4 feet, not 3 feet. Is that correct? And if that's so, I was just curious, was there any reason why, or?
In working with staff, they said, always ask for a little bit more than what you need. That way, if
Yeah. just as tolerance, I guess,
Sure.
of
Yes.
what you're,
Yes.
okay.
And then, for clarification purposes, the setback from Columbus Drive has been reduced from 46 to 31.19.
Okay.
I'm so used to dealing with front yard setbacks that
Okay.
I'm used to a special road.
Right, and then if you can just walk me through what's happening on the rear of the site. So is there going to be, there's not going to be any light installed in the yard, like meaning like a light pole, there isn't one existing, and,
Let's stick to the variance.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to educate myself as to what, we have that big space in the back, and I'm just a little concerned. What are you doing for your fencing around the property?
Currently, there is a chain link fence that we will be removing,
Okay.
and at this point, we do not plan on doing any fencing
Okay, all
other
right.
than landscaping.
All right, and then there's no poles back there, right?
No, there's no poles.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you.
No further questions.
Okay, well, the rebuttal for that should be pretty easy. So we can close the public hearing if there is no rebuttal for what you've heard. Then we can discuss the case, and we'll start on the right. If there's anything to discuss.
No discussion, I think, keeping in line with the appropriateness of the neighborhood is great, and as long as it coordinates with the city, as was mentioned, I think it should pretty well.
Yes, I agree. I think the fabric around the area is like with that type of setback, so I think it's appropriate to give them the variance with that condition as stated.
And
This puts a nail in the coffin of an expansion of Columbus Avenue decades to come. I'm all for it.
So I guess the discussion point here is whether or not the applicant would coordinate with the transportation engineer. I agree that there's nothing solid in the future, so I think the applicant would have to coordinate regardless down the road, and that's just gonna be a matter that is gonna be addressed in the future. And just looking at the block, I think their setback is consistent with what we have there as well.
Okay, so pretty reasonable conversation. We'll entertain a motion for the variance itself, and then we can discuss the certificate of appropriateness.
I'll make a motion to accept the variance.
We want to make that condition, right, that they come to staff.
For an approval without conditions.
I'm sorry.
For an approval with conditions. This is.
This is a BLC.
Move that the variance request for case BLC 19-04, located at 1306 East Columbus Drive in the Ybor City Historic District, as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing, to reduce the East Columbus Drive special front yard setback from 46 feet to 3 feet, with encroachments of 1 foot for eaves and gutters, be granted with the following conditions. And that would be that the applicant coordinate his request with city transportation. Is that correct? Okay.
Commissioners, I would actually just suggest that you just grant it or deny it. If they have other issues that they have to deal with transportation, other requirements that they still have to meet, they'll still have to meet them. But your variance should be granted just on the legal criteria stated in the code, because you're not supposed to be considering these other considerations. It's either a variance, it's within your purview, or it's not.
the
So I think you
conditions.
should we won't really enforce that if you attach it anyway. So I would suggest for it to be clean, that you don't attach that. And certainly it's been made clear that to the applicant that he will have to deal with transportation if there's any other requirements. It just won't be part of your legal motion.
What, in the future, can we eliminate the variance with conditions if we shouldn't attach those to them?
You can attach conditions. It's this particular condition that I have concerns with.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right, now the hardship to the property
think you have to-
was,
I think you have to restate the.
do I have to restate without conditions? I can do that. Oh, for an approval without conditions. Move that the variance request for case BLC 19-04 for the property located at 1306 East Columbus Drive, Ybor City Historic District, be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a variance to reduce the East Columbus Drive special front yard setbacks from 46 feet to 3 feet with encroachments of 1 foot for eaves and gutters, based on the petitioner meeting the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria set forth in Chapter 27, Section 2796D of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances for granting variances as stated, and the evidence provided in this public hearing, specifically that, I have them somewhere. That the intent of the variance request is to maintain the historic fabric of the existing setbacks of the surrounding structures.
I have one comment. Then we say 4 feet, the total setback. I think you stated 3 feet, and they're asking for 4 feet.
But isn't that an exclusive thing, where if you get 3, you can do 4, but if you get 4, you can't do 3?
We can amend.
May I add some information? You tied it to the site plan that was presented, so that's what he's bound by, if that's the pleasure of the board, and then state that that dimension is dictated from the front property line.
All right, the measurement of, did I say 3? Of 3 feet is dictated from the front property line, as shown on the site plan.
Okay, that's a motion, I think. I think we got it there. A second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just wanted to offer, well, just wanted to amend the motion to allow 4 feet from the front, from the property line to the front of the property. Or, I'm sorry, from the property line to the front of the structure on the site plan.
Would you like to amend the motion?
Are we sure that needs to be done?
I don't think so.
Because again, if you go to 3, if you do
Yeah.
3, you
Okay.
could do 4. But if you did 4, you couldn't do 3.
Right, okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Variance is granted, and now we can proceed into the discussion of the certificate of appropriateness.
Commissioner Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Staff's findings that this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines with the plans that were submitted on January 4th, 2019. We have a list of conditions. Through his presentation, he addressed the majority of these conditions. Additional information should be discussed at this hearing this morning. He had talked about the scoring patterns to meet the historic fabric. If he has any illustrations, he should provide that at this time. We did discuss the fencing. The fencing that's currently there on the east side, on the east side of the property. There's a chain link fence there that's partially on his property and partially not on the property. So, you know, with the future development there, is the whole chain link fence going to come down? There's a partial going to remain because it's not on his property. And if he's going to erect a new fence as part of this submission requirement. Elevation from grade, we have a a submission requirement that's met. We have a fixed point from either the crown of the street, the curbing, or the sidewalk, so that dimension is consistent. There was some inaccuracies on his drawings on the section. It showed a boxed-in overhang, and then on the elevations, it showed exposed rafter tails. So clarification on that. He did discuss that the rafter tails will be present, but because this is coming forward for a final, we need that information as well. And then he went through his wall section, and he talked about the color selection that is kind of outstanding still. I didn't get a definite direction on that, but we could work on that as he finalizes his drawings. I will be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the opportunity for public comment on, or you've provided the presentation for both the variance and the certificate of appropriateness, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So public comment time would be for the certificate of appropriateness. I don't see anybody, so we'll move to allow commissioners to ask the questions regarding the presentation of the certificate of appropriateness, and we'll start on my left.
I don't have any questions.
I have no questions, thank you.
No, I have no questions, and it seems like the last time we saw the same type of architecture incorporated elements in this.
Just a couple of quick questions, just going off what Mr. Vila was saying. So the rafters will be exposed on the
Yes.
exterior, correct?
Yes.
And I appreciate you incorporating the double hung window above the staircase. Why isn't the window to the left double hung as well? Is that fixed?
This here,
Yes.
that's actually a door that
Oh,
allows
it's a door to the balcony. Okay, got it. And then I just asked you to coordinate final colors with staff, and no further comments on my part.
Okay. It's an easy rebuttal too, I think. So with that, we can close the public hearing, have the opportunity to discuss the case, but I think that we kind of already hashed that out. If there's a motion somebody would like to entertain, we can get that up for discussion.
I can, I'd like to present a final approval motion on this. So this would be for the certificate of appropriateness. This is final approval. Move to grant certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at the public hearing in BLC 1904 for the property located at 1306 East Columbus Drive, based upon the finding of fact that the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons. It's consistent with staff review and has addressed comments from the BLC Commission.
We have a motion. Any discussion on that motion? None? A second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Does the applicant understand the motion that's presented and the conditions attached to the final approval?
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree with him?
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Commissioners, the next case is BLC 19-21 for the address of 2105 North Nebraska Avenue. The primary structure it was constructed in 1909. The request is about 15,000 square foot to the historic structure. This is coming in for final. On the overhead, I put the language from the preliminary approval. The past action was on December 18th, 2018. States here that to grant a preliminary approval for BLC 19-21 for the address located at 2105 North Nebraska Avenue, with the following conditions: that the site plan, the general massing, the connection to the historic building, and renovations to the historic building are granted a preliminary approval, and that all other items discussed at the hearing are open to further development by the applicant at today's hearing. Just to refresh your memory, and some of the site issues. Starting with the Sanborn map. This is Nebraska Avenue that runs north and south, bisected by 11th Avenue. This is the historic structure. It's a masonry structure as indicated by the color scheme on the Sanborn map. It's the blue. Just to the south of 11th Avenue, highlighted in the green, there was some fabric back in 1929 that has been removed, and that's a parking area now to support the primary structure in the addition. The addition will take place to the north and will be engaged into the historic building along Nebraska Avenue. And then to the north, you have 12th Avenue. From above, you have Palm Avenue to the south. You have the parking area that's already asphalt. As you move to the north down Nebraska, you have 11th Avenue, then the historic structure, and in the green box is where the addition is going to take place. This is the primary structure. This is the front elevation facing Nebraska. Looking at the north elevation, as you recall from the previous hearing, that staff had a strong position with the setback of the structure and the massing and how it connected to the structure, and we wanted it to be back of these three bays that they were exposed to provide similarity with the south elevation. So these three bays will be exposed on the north as it is on the south. Moving around to the rear elevation, see the water table, you see the installation of the windows, how they're recessed, and then the horizontal datum lines that are expressed in the facades. So looking at the surface parking, the perimeter fencing around that parking. Moving back to the primary structure, looking at the ceremonial front stairs. Some of the other details on the building, the paired windows with the fan lights above. Another series of windows. The doors with a lintel above and the water table expressed. The corner element. And then to conclude, once you get onto the entrance above those grand stairs, the railing and the column details. This time the applicant will address the board.
Ron, I have a quick question,
Sure.
if it's okay if I ask. To your knowledge, has there ever been, in addition to a social club in Ybor City?
There was a missing element to the Italian club that they put. There was a clinic building there that we've done a balcony on 7th Avenue. Central Ybor has, they have the Centro Español there, and you see the new development that came on board there, and the interaction that has to the historic building as well.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Creer. I am with Creer Barna Design Studio. In the interest of time, last meeting we talked about the historic significance of the building. In the interest of time, I might directly introduce my team, Andrew Matson. And I just want to say, we've been working with staff. We took your comments from the last meeting. We've been refining the design, and we're excited to present this to you today.
Again, my name is Andrew Matson. I wanted to take the time first to say thank you for letting us present again for the certificate of appropriateness and for your comments from the previous time. I really do feel like it actually made the project a lot better. We've really looked at your comments and kind of tweaked the design, and I feel like the way it's going, it's improved the project dramatically. I'm going to kind of rehash some of the comments, or not comments, but some of our design goals and some of the site constraints, just for people that aren't familiar with it. The design goals are kind of along the lines of the historic preservation guidelines. We're going to preserve the building's historic form, envelope, and significant materials. The addition will be differentiated from the old and be compatible with the historic in terms of features, scale, proportions. The new addition will be constructed so that it's undertaken in a manner that, if removed in the future, the essential form of the existing building will remain and will be able to be replaced. And then any deteriorated historical features on the existing building will be repaired rather than replaced. Those are kind of our design goals. Again, the project site is relative to the historic, for Central Ybor Complex and 7th Avenue. We are over on the north side, northwest side by the I-4 off-ramp, 275 to I-4. This is the existing German Club. This is the parking that will support it and our proposed addition. And here's the I-4 on-ramp right here, Nebraska and Palm Avenue. The general history of the American Club, built in 1909 or 1908, opened in 1909. The existing building, the existing west facade. And as we are going through, these are some of the images of the deteriorated existing elements of the building. We've hired a structural engineer to do an analysis of the building, a contractor on how to repair it, but these are some of the elements that you can see: the concrete spalling, some of the decorative banding is chipped, the windowsills are cracking. A closer look at the concrete, is the spalling of the concrete. Damages at the sills or at the jambs of the windows. Water's kind of got behind it and peeled up some of the concrete. Oops. There's another, you can see the spalling of the existing. And now this is a concrete building, not a brick building. So this is one of the first, did a cast in place concrete building. The blocks are scored to look like blocks, but it's actually a concrete building. This is looking at the site of where we're proposing our addition. Behind there is a residential property. This is looking north towards I-4 off-ramp or on-ramp, the existing pole for the signage, billboard. This is looking up Nebraska towards the I-4 off-ramp, on-ramp, across Nebraska. The existing parking lot of the site. And now this is part of the design exception. We have a design exception we've applied for, and this is the back side of the existing building relative to the historic building. We obviously don't meet the current setbacks or buffer guidelines, and also there's a fencing requirement. I don't believe the homeowner wants a fence or a wall. It's actually a masonry wall that's supposed to be built. So the design exception is to reduce the buffer and then not build the wall between the properties. We will have a wall or fence, a wooden fence between the addition and the adjacent residential property, though, per the BLC guidelines. Here's just our site plan. We have the addition, the parking lot. Our site data supports us. What we have is, I'll go to that first, is the proposed addition. So part of the comments that we had, the concerns that were brought up during our previous presentation were the window relationships of per the floor of the existing to the new building. The entry of the addition seemed kind of misplaced. The horizontal proportions of the proposed addition didn't really align with the existing building. And the north facade of the building seemed to be kind of a secondary element and not really fully developed. So part of what we've done is we've reoriented the entry to the existing building, and we put it into the center of the feature wall of the proposed addition. And we've worked with staff for the setback. We've set back the proposed addition 9 feet from the building. And then it's actually the face from the existing facade of the building is 9 feet, plus the additional 11 feet 8 to match the windows, or to allow for the 3-window bay to be seen. The parking, to support our parking, our tenant right now is a medical tenant, but they're not 100% medical, so what we did, without knowing the exact program, we said the addition was going to be all medical. That's 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet. The existing building will be renovated, will be planned for 1 space per 1,000 square feet. That gets us a total of 47 parking spaces. Our lot supports 60 parking spaces. Our proposed plaza or entry feature and sidewalks to the site, we are going to go with the 3x3 grid that is in Ybor. And there's 2 types. There was a saw cut and a scored or tooled. We're going to go with the tooled sidewalks. That would be the new sidewalks, because obviously we're going to destroy the existing sidewalks while we're renovating it, and then that plaza feature to lead you into the building. Very simplistic and historic. The fencing around the parking lot, so we have the wood fencing for the buffer of the building, but around the parking lot we're going to go matching. This is the fence that's existing between the Hillsborough the children's park and then our site, and we're just going to replicate that. The existing site along the parking, we're going to improve it to the City of Tampa's landscape guidelines. So that's the shrubs every so often, trees. There's existing trees. There's actually cypress trees and oak trees existing along the site. And I'll look at that. So there's existing oak trees. We're going to put the new fence around, the minimum landscaping requirements for the shrubs. And then this actually area is a retention area that has existing cypress trees in it. Going into the design of the building, just kind of recapping the paired window arrangements, and actually there was a concern about each floor of our addition had the similar windows, so we went back and looked at how the windows were designed. So there's ground floor windows, second floor windows, and third floor windows. The horizontal banding, our massing for the building for the proposed addition to the existing, and our new elevation for the building. And what we decided to do is we'd have the ground floor windows, very simplistic. It was more of security, so they're smaller punched windows. The second floor, they were a larger single window that was had a transom and more detail. And then the third floor windows were taller, narrower windows, and they were paired up together. And then the horizontal banding of the existing facade. So here's a close-up rendering of the entry, and you can see we've shifted the entry to be centered of the wall now. It's not asymmetrical like it was before. We introduced the water table on the base of the building to match the existing water table, the smaller punched windows, the bigger windows, and then the paired windows on the top. And we've kind of made it the figured ground so they weren't all like stacked on top of each other, and the horizontal banding breaks up the building. Look at the plaza. The scored sidewalk. We're going to shift the sidewalk so you could the 3x3 grid for the sidewalk for the public realm, and then when you cross over entry into the building, we shifted the grid over so that you could make it distinguish between public and private. The north facade, the corner detail we've kept the same, but you can see we've introduced the water table, get more detail. The windows are recessed into it. Going up to the second floor, you can see the bigger windows and our second floor windows are more closely aligned. Oops. Third floor, the same thing. We paired them up. We've skinnied them down. We've added a little more detail, but not as much detail as the existing building. The north facade, we've taken what we've done on the west facade and kind of wrapped it around to the north facade. We're still going to have to work with the fire marshal's office because we're pretty close to the property line, but this is our design intent was the first floor windows, horizontal banding, second floor windows, horizontal banding, third floor windows. Perspective of the north facade. And again, you could really see where we stepped our addition back so that the historic element were secondary to the historic building. The connection, we've gone in and looked at the connection. So the windows, the punched windows and the corner glass, that's going to be a storefront system. But the connection, we really wanted to separate the new building from the existing building. We're going to use a curtain wall system. It's a SSG system, which is a structural silicone glaze system, so that you could really see the existing connection of the building. As you go into the first floor, you can see we didn't want to damage the banding and the historical elements of the building. So we're going to take our storefront, notch it around it, and then have a metal flashing that will allow us to weatherproof the connections. So we have it at the water table, at the banding over here, and it's a structural silicone, so basically the glass is what we'll see. We have glass samples we'll show you. The floors are separated, so you really get this full height glass. And part of the concern was the north facade. We're blocking the north facade of the building. And so we feel that the way we're approaching this design, that we're gonna actually be able to experience the north facade like you've never been able to experience before, which is as you go up on the floors, our circulation between of the new building is actually going to occur at the north facade. So this is, you come up the elevator, you could see straight through, and you could actually go up to the windows on the second floor, which you've never been able to do before, and actually get to see the historic details as you move up on the building. So you go up to the third floor, you really get to see the third floor, the windows, the elevations, the detailing that was up high on the building, which obviously when on the ground floor you'll never be able to see. Just the overall massing. For our proposed HVAC, we're going to push the building, all the units back behind the core, so it'll be back from the street frontage and away from the north facade. So we had two facades. We really don't want to see that equipment from the north or the west facade. The new entry feature is in the middle. We had to make some concessions. We're going to lose a little bit of square footage of usable space that could probably for the lobby to get people down this corridor. So that's our circulation corridor. And as you go up, you get to experience that north facade of the existing building, and you move up. This is the west facade. We kept the windows. We wanted the back facade, so you have the north facade and the west facade. That's going to be actually a white brick. When you get to the back of the building, the west facade, we're just going to simplify it, go to stucco. We've kept the window proportions similar to in the heights of the windows, the same as on the north facade and the west facade, but we just kind of simplified it. The proposed south elevation, you can see in this elevation, you won't even be able to see our addition. Floor plans, and I'll skip over that and go straight to the wall section. So again, one of our big concerns was about connecting the new building to the old building. You'll see here's the historic building. We are actually going to pull the structure off the building so that this is the structural element, so that the bearing point of that building will not interfere with the foundation, the existing foundation. We're going to cantilever that corridor so that the connection, the damage to the building is actually, we're going to cantilever it, we're going to leave a gap, we're going to basically be able to not physically touch the building. Again, the north facade is going to be that's the CMU with thin brick, white thin brick, the windows, and we're pushed back from the existing building 9 feet. This is the storefront system. It's not going to be anodized aluminum. It'll probably be a colored, most likely white to match the existing. Those are the punched window openings and the corner glass. And then this is that SSG system, which is a clear silicone glaze. It allows for a lot more opening on it. And then we have our brick samples, which is, well, actually, yeah. And there's two types, and we're just not sure on the price points on them yet. And then the color of the glass was a concern. We had like a green glass. So part of the issue is, actually, can you have that too? Is we still need to meet the Florida Energy Code guidelines. So it's going to have some, it's going to have some tint to it, but that's pretty close to meeting the shading coefficient and heat gain factors and U factors for the building. And then I have the model, updated model, if you have any questions. Yeah. I mean, I could walk around the model if you guys have any questions on it.
We probably will.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you're done with your presentation, we'll go to staff report, and then allow public comment. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Just to reiterate, preliminary approval was granted for the site plan, the general massing, and the connection to the building, and then the historic renovation to the current building. The outstanding items that were paramount on the first hearing that they received preliminary approval were the connection to the building itself, the windows and the similarity and the sensitivity of the windows as it relates to the historic building, the horizontal banding and lining up with the floors, the colored glass or glass examples, and then the main entrance. I believe that the main entrance still needs further discussion today. He has the documentation, but he kind of glazed over it. Some of the other items that were discussed from the previous hearing were the solid waste, the location, and the sensitivity of that as you come into the residential community down that block. So additional information on that as well. The design exception that he touched upon, staff will support the elimination of a wall. A wall is never a good situation in an urban environment, so we will support the erection of the fence, a wood fence. The location of the mechanicals, he did show that. I don't know if any screening was to accompany that. And then the location of the signage as well. With Ybor City, we do suggest that they provide us with a final color selection as well, all the combinations that are addressed, and he could present that to staff at a later date. Transportation is here if he wishes to discuss. Nothing from transportation at this time. I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Is there any public comment associated with this project? Seeing none, we will move into the commissioners asking questions. And I'll start on my left.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to mic here. Thanks for your presentation. I wanted to see if maybe if there is any way possible you can show us a before and after what you've done on each elevation.
Yes, right.
Just to refresh, because I know there's been
Yeah, no,
quite a bit of changes. And then maybe get into a little detail as to what you addressed on that front-facing elevation, interfacing with Nebraska Avenue.
Okay, so I'll go back into the existing, so the first presentation. Okay. So the original, I'll start with the west facade. So, oops. Okay, there it is. Okay, so the original west facade. That was the original west facade. So you could see the original, we aligned all the windows. So they were stacked vertically on each other. The entry was kind of off-center to the building, and then we had less horizontal banding for it. So when we went back to the new design, that same facade, and I'll do it the same exact elevation. Okay. So there, we've taken the windows, we've shifted them so they're not stacked on top of each other, very similar to the way the existing building is. So you can see the windows are not aligned vertically, and we've shifted them horizontally, and we've actually changed them so that the windows on, there's 3 distinct window types. A first floor window type, a second floor window type, and a third floor window type. On the north facade, again, we've shifted the windows so that they're not in line with each other, and that there's a distinct separation between the first floor, or the windows on each floor. If you go to the north facade, this is the old north facade. The windows were paired up. They were actually on this one, I believe they were actually all the same window type too. So we've taken the west facade and we've made the distinct window type, first floor windows, second floor windows, third floor windows, and shifted them so that they don't align vertically. And I actually do think it makes the building a lot more dynamic than what it was before, and has more relationship to the historic elements of the existing building.
Okay, and in regards to like the front entrance, it looks like a while ago there was like a taller vertical element that was the side front canopy. So it looks like that's been removed, right? And then, was there any?
No, well, that
or is
vertical
that
element.
was in front of it, right?
Yeah, that was a
Okay.
signage. We don't want a sign that big.
Right.
So what we actually did, the entry or the canopy is the same, which was going to be a glass and simplistic canopy. That's the pylon sign. We're going to do away with it. Ron touched on it. We didn't really talk about the sign, but it's a monument sign. It's going to be a low monument sign for the tenant. The tenant hasn't expressed their needs yet, so we didn't want to make statements on it. And we'll work with staff in the future to make sure the signage is appropriate for the neighborhood. So what one of the concerns was this entry piece was kind of off-centered. It didn't align with the floors above it. When we went into our new design, what we did was we centered the entry on the facade. It's a distinct, very pronounced entrance. There was discussion about maybe it being 2-story, 1-story. Again, we didn't want to compete with the historic building, so the historic German American Club had that grand staircase up to a canopy. Ours, we didn't want to be, that would be like 2 competing elements. And actually, we're still going to use that as an entry. It's because the tenant has 2 functions to it. This will be one function. That'll be another. The main building will be another function. But we shifted the windows, so we have smaller punched windows. Like traditionally on the ground floor of any urban environment, you don't put big windows. The windows get bigger as you go up.
So like the canopy itself, are you envisioning that being a break metal like fascia?
Yeah, it's going to be a steel. Yeah, steel.
Okay. And then the columns themselves, is it steel? Then it becomes like this brick material, or
No, it was going to be all metal.
Okay.
Like it was going to be 2 type. So this fatter column and the middle column, and we're going to on our the way we're going to drain it, we're going to hide the drains through the columns too. So I don't want to see downspouts, water flowing. So we'll drain it through the columns.
Okay. And then any exterior lighting that's
The
gonna
light,
occur?
we don't have any wall sconces. The lights we're going to propose are actually going to be up on the soffit of the roof, so we'll kind of graze the building downwards, and then we might have lights in the grass space, kind of grazing upward to create that kind of, so that these historic or the banding elements kind of really get accentuated with the light, and then we're going to have to do a light exploration. See is it better horizontal or vertical?
Right. And then just want to be clear, so there's no screen wall surrounding your mechanical equipment on your roof?
We have right now, we're showing one, but with staff, sometimes when we were discussing with staff, they think that screen walls could actually be not as nice. Well, so there's the screen wall. And that kind of doesn't do it justice, because that's just an elevation. So when you go into the actual building, screen wall, you can see it's a lot smaller than it is. The mechanical equipment's never, pretty to look at. And I think if you put the screen wall, you're just kind of drawing attention to it. We showed it right now because that's, traditionally people like to screen their mechanical equipment. But if we do a study to say, hey, look, you're not going to see it except for on I-4, which hopefully you're not looking at my building driving,
But, so on the rear side, there's no parapet element?
No, the rear of the building is going to be, we're sloping backwards. So that's the high. We're sloping back to a gutter and downspouts. And it's actually exactly kind of what's on the existing building.
Okay, because I've noticed on the other building, there is a rear parapet.
There is a rear parapet, but there is downspouts. So if you, I apologize. Oh, there. So there is, you can see the gutters. So it's a parapet wall, but gutters. So it's a scupper and gutter system on the back of it. So when we do ours, we're going to have, it'll be a three-sided parapet and then just a trough gutter. And mostly because that's just better for drainage. You don't have that flashing. Weatherproofing is not always easy to maintain.
All right. I don't have any further questions.
Had you had any consideration, I'm talking now about the canopy in the front with the columns, and that was a good explanation and a clever use of the columns themselves to run the water off. You're in the northwest part of Ybor City. There's not a lot of neighboring structure around suggestive of Ybor City aside from that building itself and some of the smaller things. And I'm looking at the canopy, and I'm wondering if you had thought about supporting that at any time by truss rods, the way it's done throughout the rest of the Ybor City. And I think, I have this feeling, and I could be all wet, and it's not a deal breaker in my mind anyway, but if you were to put truss rods there instead of the columns, you would bring that element that runs all the way through 7th and 8th Avenues in Ybor City, everywhere, way up into the northwest corner of Ybor City itself, and I think that would be a good thing. Had you considered that at all?
We did not. We actually, in the beginning, we talked about it when we were, not in the beginning, after our first presentation, when we were discussing the actual entry point of the building, we got into discussions of actually relocating the entry in between the buildings, because that seemed like a circulation. And as the more we explored that, it seemed very set back. It seemed actually like an afterthought and the connection, and we would then, we have to put a canopy, now we're blocking the connection. So our whole concept of really expressing the connection, that transparent connection of the new building to the old building, the canopy started blocking it. We moved over to that entry. The columns were there because the existing building kind of had this vertical nature, and we used the columns for twofold for drainage. Because then that's a problem too when you put the canopy, when you put the turnbuckle or some sort of truss to support like a cantilever column, then how do you really drain it? And then I felt the vertical aspect of it kind of was similar to it of what was already there, but we could definitely. I see what you're saying is to bring elements of the 7th Avenue over to this part of town, but for us, we were just trying to it served, like I said, two functions. It was drainage, and then the existing building had the columns supporting the canopy.
Thank you.
Yes. Can you describe a little more the connection between the new building and the old building? I see the slabs there where you have your circulation, but I don't see any space for your ceilings.
For what?
And, between the new building and the old building, that corridor that you have.
Okay. So what we have,
You see, I see the slabs connecting to the old structure, but I don't see that the curtain wall don't align with the slab, and what happened there with the ceilings and.
Okay, yeah. So this we pushed. Here is the slab edge, and we're gonna have what I'm not showing in my model. Unfortunately, there is a column right back here you can't see. There will be beams spanning backwards. So there will be cantilever. And we will, on that connection, we're gonna have the slab edge and then the supporting steel. But we're not gonna have, at this point right here, we are not gonna do transom glass. It's gonna be clear glass so that element is really expressed. So we're gonna pull it off a bit. It's hard to tell on the model in that.
But you're gonna have a drop ceiling there, right?
No drop. We're gonna expose the ceiling and that connection piece to get the highest part. So if you look in the, yeah, at the connection point. So if we go into, where is this? Okay, so this element, if like, there's gonna be like a header here, obviously, to transition the ceiling points from here to from the corridor, but we want the connection, the floor slab of the building to be expressed as much as we can up to the ceiling. So there will be obviously beams. So we have a column here, column here, column here. We're gonna cantilever across. So you will see that structure, but we're not gonna put a ceiling on there at
Okay.
that point.
I think that's important because, since you're making this connection
Yeah.
and that's kind of the key of the building,
Yeah.
how you connect the new structure with the old structure, and this is gonna be so transparent.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the details you need to pay attention so it looks good from the outside.
Oh yeah, and so it's hard to tell here on my wall section, but you can see this is the column, supporting column, and we are trying to cantilever over, and I want that to be visible from when you're standing in here. I've gone and measured the building a couple times. It's very hard to get floor to floor heights. I'm in this model, I'm doing my best to represent the actual floor to floor heights, but when you get on the first floor, it's actually kind of, you're 2 feet below the entry point, and then the grade kind of shifts down. So my first floor elevation might change slightly just because, I've got to get a professional surveyor to really tell me where that datum line is. But for the second floor, this is matches from this right here. The third floor or second floor will align with the existing buildings.
Right, and that's the floor you're making a connection with the old building?
Yeah. That's the easiest point to make it. And we'll have elevators, ADA access elevators in both buildings. But I think in that connection point was the easiest to make a cross connection through the building.
So you're turning one of the existing windows?
Yeah, there is like a window there's like, I think it's a single window up in the top. We'll minimize that impact to the existing building.
My other concern is the curtain wall that you say you're gonna have a profile going all around the edge of the old building. Probably, I'm thinking about something cleaner than that.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're gonna visualize that, but it seems like a very cumbersome detail.
Unfortunately, it is not what we originally wanted, but with the being in a windborne debris zone, I have to meet the Florida product approvals, I have to meet impact ratings. There are other systems out there that I was looking at. There's this system called Slim Pact. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. I have an example of it. I chose not to go with it in this project only because of the nature of it. I was more concerned, that's not it, sorry. Slim Pact. Okay, so this was the Slim Pact window system. It's a frameless doors, frameless storefront. Unfortunately, you're still gonna have to have this massive beam at levels, and then I believe at the jams there is more damage because I don't know if we could get the curve around it. So with this system, you would have to go right up against the existing building and the facades, which meant we're going to have to start cutting into some of those cornice works. And I felt the cutting into the cornice work was more damaging than working around it with the system. And hopefully with the window system that we are selecting, which is this cassette version, that it has a very minimal profile at the jams and at the head, and then we could box around it. Yes, it's a little cumbersome, but at the same time, I feel like it's going to do less damage to the existing, and we could then get creative with our details, like creating like a nice piece, flashing piece that would actually preserve the building.
Well, I understand you want to preserve the structure, but I would think about maybe scoring,
Scoring,
you know,
yeah.
and being offset of the curtain wall.
Okay.
So and it looks like a clean cut.
Okay.
And more transparent, because I really think that it's going to get so complicated, and probably it's not going to help on the design intent that you have for that connection. But that's my
Okay.
design.
Yeah. And then, our intent was really to really kind of express it, but,
Yeah.
I still have to be practical, I mean, with it, it was like, my idea was like, yeah, we could cut around the glass, but then we're in impact ratings. They want I have to meet not only an impact rating, I have to meet energy code, which means insulated glass. I mean, there's like, it starts getting really, convoluted. And this YKK system is a Florida product approved. It's structural silicone glazing. It kind of met the intent of the clear glass. And they're on the image of it, of the system. Yeah. So it has that clear, really transparent look that we were looking for on it.
And in general, I think you are on the right direction. I think there's still a lot of things that when you get into the detail of
yes.
the building, you're gonna have to adjust proportion and massing and setbacks.
Okay.
I think you're fine. Thank you.
And just sort of continuing that line of thought a bit, do you have, I don't think you have a detail worked out, but do you have a detail worked out for how the flashing will look on the profile of the glass? Because I'm having some trouble picturing
Yeah.
a little bit of how that would actually
Okay,
look.
yeah, of that one, of the connection piece.
Yeah,
So
the
what I
connection
was,
piece to the
this
existing
is
building.
my model. Huh? Yeah, I'm open, I'm definitely open to it. I prefer the other system over the one I wanted to go with the worst case, obviously, because when it came to cost of it. Where is that? Oh, sorry, okay, that's it. Sorry, my model froze up here. So you can see those are all the variations of the model. We've done a lot of them. Okay, so in this is a simplified version so that I was having delay issues. Okay, so the intent was you could see, so that line would be the glazing system, the silicone sealant on the wall. We jog the frame up around it, and on my detail, I was doing it like an inch around the material, and then within it, we'd fabricate a metal flashing or some sort of flashing that would slide in that and match the profile of what piece it was. So on this one, it was a kind of like a C shape. Up here was a very simple reveal. When you got up, my big concern was these details up here, where you have more of an intricate. There's the glass, to do a cut glass on something like that, I don't, the fabricators these days. So we do the frame around it, keep a nice distance. We could really fabricate something metal. They could water jet a lot of different materials to then inset into that piece, and I think not damage the historic building more so. And yeah, on the outside it'll be glass. So there will be, it's going to be a nice cut edge. Remember the frame on the SSG system, the frame is on the inside of it. So I think it'll actually have a cleaner detail.
Great. And will there be any mechanical equipment in the connector, or will we all be fed in from like the north of the building?
Yeah, it's all going to be fed. So the actual, the connector is a little bit lower. We work with staff on the heights of everything. So the mechanical equipment will be on the main part of the building, fed down, and then I'm thinking, wherever that wall is, we'll side grill it. We don't need a lot of air in that connector piece. And if we have to, then we'll just do exposed metal duct, not deck.
And then could you just go over again, like why, because you're saying stucco will be used on the west facade of the building, right?
That would be a cost.
Savings?
You know, traditionally in a lot of these urban environments, you spend your money on the street facades. You know, even on the brick buildings, the front of the building was the face brick. The sides of the building, you could even as you turn the corner, the bricks kind of you use a lesser quality material for cost effectiveness. We're actually facing a residential. There's a lot of trees. The cost of putting more brick on it, and that no one's ever going to see, would just seem to be cost prohibitive. Especially since we're doing a lot of like expensive details on the front, the north and west facades. So we had to make some cost decisions.
All right, great, thank you. No further questions.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
If we can talk about the site first, I'm kind of on the fence about whether or not the columns, the rod notion of the entry canopy had occurred to me as well. I see where you're picking up, obviously, what the front of the building is doing, the original building. One of the things that sticks out in my mind is that that face of the, if you'll go to the view of the whole project, maybe from above, that allows us to see the two front entries. That actually, go back.
Okay.
That one right there.
This one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
In my mind, I think that that canopy doesn't want to extend beyond the face of the original building.
Yeah, you're talking about this little piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cut that. Okay.
I think that, and when you shorten it, maybe it goes back to rods or something like that. But I think that that plane of that existing building is something that's important to recognize. You do it in the columns, and then you project over. So I think that it's you're kind of having it both ways there. But consider that. I think that you had mentioned shifting the grid as you come in.
Yeah, so that was I think that was on the site. So we have that's the grid that we were using, the 3x3 grid. And what we were proposing is on this, so you could see the sidewalk, which is the public realm, and then we keep that 3x3 grid, but just shift it slightly off, so it's actually half of it. Right. And that just for me delineated my public realm for people walking to then approaching the building.
Yeah.
And gave it
I guess my point there is I think that when you said that you have a medical tenant, so you're evaluating it for medical tenants, I think you're on the right historic track, because these facilities, these centros, as you know, were used for community outreach for the communities that they served, and trying to make that differentiation between public and private. I don't think that this is the type of building that you do that in. I think you let the public, feel like they're welcome, and not make that distinction because of the public nature of these buildings. That's just a minor point that nobody will ever pick up on. The stair on the east side, the back stair that you have, we've got a couple different, in the documents that you presented, we've got a couple different ways that works. And I bring it up because we're spending a lot of time on this connection and how we feel about the height of the structure and how it touches that building. And I feel like we get a little bit extra consideration along that north facade. So in the presentation that you had, you've got a couple different versions where you can see through, and a couple different versions where the stair plugs into the backside and makes that slice go away. Which one is it?
I'll show you. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, right there. So we have that's the back staircase and the front staircase on it. We have been discussing the interiors. Obviously, we're working, we have a meeting with the client to talk about their layout and their needs. We have been discussing, again, to first address part of it is we are going to keep that separation so that you won't be attaching that stair directly to it. There is discussion about possibly the utilizing the existing building's other means of egress and eliminating one stair if possible, because that way we could actually share core elements. Part of it too is that we want to make sure this building works as its own feature and not have to go across other pieces. There is discussion I've been looking at doing a pair of stairs. They would kind of not interlock, because obviously that code doesn't allow interlocking stairs, but, you know, getting the stairs close enough together and keeping the remoteness of exits so that we could have a tighter core, because the building footprint's not that big. So
Well, let me pause you there, just because we can talk about all the different possibilities, but you've submitted something into the record today that we're going to discuss and possibly go forward with. How is the stair intended to work? Because here we see it, and again, what I see is conflicting parts in the record. I see a stair here that seems to open out and into that corridor. How does, if you use that stair, what does the north facade look like? Or not the north facade, but
So-
the east facade? And how do I get out of the building?
Okay, so you basically have to exit through the back. So this stair we'll exit all the way down, and we'll just go to the back side of the building, and we'll come back around. You have to get to the public realm. So
Here in this particular floor plan, you can see what I'm talking about.
yeah,
That stair
this
changes.
little element. So there's in the shaft is here. We're trying to preserve that element. So we could attach it here. Again, the stair then will be part of it. So when you travel, you'll still see that window into it.
Right, but which one is it? Are we going to see all the way through or not?
You will see. It'll be like the floor. Yeah, if we're successful, but I understand. Yeah. So his point is, if we're not successful, there is which way do we go? We're going to go with the way the floor plan is, so that it will stop. You'll see it to the back, and then when you get into the stair, you'll finish seeing the piece.
Okay, so this, if you can't use the existing means of egress and you have to have two stairs, this is the configuration that you're going to go for.
Yes.
Okay, which changes the project, I think, at least in the way that we've been talking about it before, because we've been so focused on, we want to get that detailing correct. We're concerned about how does the glass hit the wall. What are you going to see from floor to floor, because we want to see all the way through it, because that's the way it was originally presented.
Well, if that is a concern of the board, what I would propose then is modifying is that instead of the stair entry piece here, I'll shift that stair back, so then the corridor will be maintained all the way over here, and then we'll enter the stair to the side. And then you still egress through the back of the building just like you normally would. We'll just move that stair over like 3 feet.
Right.
Just so that we could keep.
I just wanted to bring that up so everybody was on the same page
I'm good
regarding
with that.
what you're doing.
If the board's concern is to keep that north facade open as possible, I'm all for it, and that's our intent. If at the worst, if we can't eliminate the stair, we'll move it off and maintain that facade.
Can you go to the back facade so we can see a couple different points?
I'll do, let's see, where is that? Yeah, there it is.
Okay, so on the back facade here, there is no door.
Yeah, this was gonna be, it was gonna be one in that piece right here. What we'll end up doing, if we have to shift that stair, this will be maintained, so you'll see straight through the building.
Right.
And we'll just convert that right there into the door out of the building.
Right, so we would have to have you work with staff on getting that proportion correct. Here on the back side, we see the guttering and the downspouts that you're talking about. That looks like about 5 of them there.
Yeah, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that they're sized and proportioned
Yeah.
for how that roof needs to work. Okay. And
It's
then-
actually, we could probably get away with less, but what we wanted to do is not run into the windows, so we kept them.
Right.
We kind of created a pattern with them in between the windows.
Understood. And the elevator, we talked about that last time, and we talked about the overcarry that might be involved with that, because
So-
again, the position of the elevator and its relationship to this the connection that you're making, we want to make sure, again, that it's successful. We've talked about the curtain wall, the stair now, and we can touch on the elevator to make sure that all these things that we think we're seeing are going to play out correctly when you build it.
I appreciate it, and I went through and I picked a Schindler elevator, because they seem to be the price point for most projects now. And the Schindler, this is a machine roomless traction elevator, low rise, 2 to 3 story building. If we go into the overhead clearance, this is the element you guys are speaking of. And if we go to it, it's hard to see, but it says 12'7" is our overhead clearance from the finished floor to the roof. Based on my calculations for the building, that's the old one. I have 14 feet for that connection.
Correct. Again, I'm not disputing it. We want to see it be successful. We don't want to see a little
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to
cap that has to come out of there and create that change. You've done a lot of detailing on the floor below. If you zoom down a little bit, that has your concepts for cantilevering and the steel, et cetera. But when you get up to the top there, all that stuff goes away. So we can play along and like understand that you're going to work it out, but there isn't the same amount of detail up in that roof structure as there is on that third floor structure. So again, just cautioning and clarifying that from my point of view, I wouldn't want to see the elevator cab and overcarry have to come up out of that slice because we're trying to sculpt the way that thing touches.
Yeah, and so, for my, to get the rating requirement, we're probably going to build that shaft out of masonry anyhow. Right. So then what we'll end up doing is just putting a simple metal deck on it. And my concern, yes, you are absolutely correct. I didn't show the joist. We're going to have bar joists on there, but the clear overhead of that shaft, we won't have any structure except the hoistway beam that we need to put in there to construct the elevator. So that 14 feet, I feel, is more than sufficient for that piece. But I do agree that obviously, I kind of stopped my detailing here with regards to the roof element.
Understood. And then can you go to the elevations of the east, west, and north of the new?
You said what facade? I'm sorry.
Just the addition, just the primary facades that we would have there. We've only got 3 to deal with.
So this is the primary facade. And I don't know why that one's in. There we go.
I guess what we obviously haven't spent as much time with it as you have, but one of the things that I can't get a sense on is what the pattern relationship of the existing building is to the new building, because there's a basement and there's a ground floor, or 1, 2, 3 pattern that goes up that building, and I'm trying to understand if the new one adheres to that, if it deviates from it, if it's consistent in and of itself, because it seems like there's, on the 3 different facades that you're responsible for, there's 3 different ways to stack these things up. And I don't think perhaps that was the case with the Centro itself. I think that they probably had a way that they stacked, windows over one bay that was consistent, but I haven't spent as much time with the building.
You mean on the main building? Actually,
Yes.
The windows are on each facade are slightly different on it. So, okay, so if we go back to here, so the answer to first the alignment issue, we are on the 3rd floor. We are aligning with the 3rd floor of that. The second, the 1st floor or 2nd floor, we are going to be a little bit not in line, but that's because they dug down and we can't. Right. I don't know.
I'm not necessarily concerned with horizontal datums of alignment. I'm interested in patterns, pairings of windows and how they relate to windows above and below themselves.
So the windows on the west facade, there didn't seem to be as distinct of a pattern. It was the window, a big window, and then a paired window above. and they didn't seem to really align with it, and I could show you on the existing, we'll go to actually better. There you go. You could see it's there. This window is kind of like not in line with it, and it's paired, and this one doesn't really align with it. If you go to the north facade, Ron, do you have that north facade picture? Okay, so but the center point is what we did. So if you go back to the existing, or what we're proposing, we started, it's centered. So this wall is centered here. The windows, I basically have the first floor and the second floor. It's 2'8", and then this is 4'8", and then kind of did it from the left and right, and then made it symmetrical. If you look at the north facade, the windows, this window is slightly out of plane of that window, and they don't really align as much as you think it aligns. It's like it goes from, there's 3 windows in the middle, they're not spaced same, so it's 3, and then 3 spaced out. Up on the there was 4, 3, 3, 1. So it's not as clear cut. When we did ours, on the north facade. So I lined the third floor windows with the first floor, and then I shifted the windows so that this alignment was in line with it, and then kind of balanced it out. So these windows are all the same size. The space here and here are equal. Space here, the left and right are equal. Went from 4 windows to 3 windows. Trying to create a nice a repetitive pattern that wasn't so as much sporadic as I thought the existing building had for that facade.
Okay, thanks for the discussion there. There's still some gray areas there, but we'll let you have the opportunity to, I guess, rebut anything you've heard. You've been in the conversation, so I think that we've addressed all the points that we've made to you along the way. Yeah. If there's anything you want to add to it, you've got 5 minutes.
No, I'm good.
So what we'll do is we'll close the public hearing, and then we'll allow commissioners to discuss the case and then entertain a motion. So we'll start on the left.
Okay, I think there was some fine tuning that is heading towards a better direction. But as a discussion key point, I am concerned, and it was a good catch that we do want to keep that separation between the addition and the new or the old German American Club clear. So I am very concerned about what if the plan goes south, and so if there is any way to mitigate that and shift that over so we can have that clear line of sight between the 2 buildings, that would be a big point.
Well, I think that's easy to make that a condition.
Right. However, there was a couple items that I was concerned about, and I brought up in previous discussion, is that I don't understand the relationship of the canopy piece above the curtain wall, which is the brake metal piece that's above here. I don't understand why it's projecting out the way it is. I specifically, as a comment made, noted that I think that could be trimmed back quite a bit. And I know that there wasn't any discussion brought up as a question to the applicant. So that's my concern. It's unusual lighting to have against something that's historic. I don't think it really fits into the context. Number 2, I think that the residents of the building do not want to look at mechanical equipment hanging out in the back side of this structure. So I think that there still needs to be some address done on the rooftop mechanical equipment. As we know, on the historic German American Club, there is a parapet wall there. We don't see this at all with this version. I think we're too focused on what's happening on the outside of the neighborhood, and we're not really thinking about the inside of the neighborhood, which is my concern. My other feeling is that I feel like the facade still needs to be worked on in terms of relationship with the windows. I'm having a hard issue with all the jogs that are occurring from a micro level to a big level. And what I mean by that is from the curtain wall details to the middle windows being recessed in, so we don't have like an outer edge perimeter. So there is a jog from the upper windows to the middle windows, and then it bumps back out on the lower windows, and it just seems a little strange to me. That is a specific relationship that we see with the German American Club, but we don't see that here in this facade proposal. I do agree that the canopy should be brought back, at least behind the facade of the German American Club. I don't think it needs to project out that far. Just see if I'm missing any other notes here. And with all this said, for the glazing, I'm still not really satisfied with the tint. I am familiar with the manufacturer of that glazing. I'm not going to go into details with that, but I know that there are other options out there to be more optically clear. This is kind of a concern to me. I don't want to see any green tint from this building. So with all those items said, those major key points, I still feel that we should continue this and not go for a final approval.
There are some issues, yeah. But I really have no further comments.
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Vela that still there are elements that, to me, it feels a little forced, try to bring the elements from the historic building into the new building, and it doesn't feel natural. The window arrangements on the solid portions of this building is still not in harmony to me. It seems like it's being forced in a way. And now perhaps we don't need to bring those elements to the new building. This is a new building, and maybe we need to look at this as something totally different that complements the historic structure, but it doesn't replicate necessarily everything on the openings. I think I agree with the commissioners that probably we need to review this one more time and see also those details that we were discussing today, how they're going to work and touch the historic building. I think it should be more an in-depth analysis of those connections, and we should be able to review it one more time.
I agree with what was said, and just to sort of add on to that, depending on the type of connection that gets made, whether you keep it the flashing detail or whether it gets scored, I think becomes a big change as well, and I'm not sure that's something that, I guess you have to work with staff to see if it can be approved or not as well.
For the curtain wall connection.
For the curtain wall connection.
The way that it interfaces.
Yes, correct.
Well, I think that the project has made great strides forward, and I appreciate the effort and sensitivity that's gone into it. You've heard a lot of concerns regarding the detailing and perhaps wanting to see it again. We have the ability to make a motion. I guess you are going for final here, so I would ask legal or staff, what's the, you've heard some of the sentiments of the board, what are the options available?
Well, the petitioner has the right to have it voted up or down.
Mm-hmm.
If, in listening to your comments, they wish to have a continuance, they would request the continuance.
Okay. Well, I'd ask the petitioner, based upon what you've heard, without a motion that's on the table, how would you care to proceed? Do you want to have the up or down vote on what has been submitted and proposed, or would you consider what could be a motion that entertains a continuance?
Morning, Commissioners. Frank Capitano. I don't believe I was sworn in. I do. Hi, Frank Capitano, Alliant Partners, 1320 East 9th Avenue, Ybor City. If it's an up or down vote and we don't pass, then we start from scratch, I believe, or how does it?
double checking, but I think we have to wait a year unless there's
Yeah.
a substantial change, and and the board itself would vote on whether there was a substantial change.
And I appreciate all the commissioners' comments. I would ask that if the, from the place where we were to where we are today, and the willingness of us as the client, and what our architect team is working on, and how they have accomplished to where we gotten today, our challenge is, we've gotten our last extension. We are under contract to close, and I believe it's February 12th? February 12th. I don't believe I'll get another extension, so that's our concern. I guess, and what I'm asking are the items we discussing not available to be negotiated with staff, or or it's too material in development here at the commission for a final CA?
And thank you, Frank. I wanted to ask the petitioner, because if there are extenuating circumstances, I think that in terms of how we proceed with this, we need to be careful and not paint them into a corner that we don't want them to go to. I think that we've seen progress on the project, and if there is the potential to craft a motion that doesn't hamstring the petitioner, but gets the sense of the commission into what comes forward, then I would ask that we make that effort. But with that said, I guess we can entertain a motion, because the petitioner knows where we stand and our options.
I think from what I've heard is because Mr. Capitano said negotiation, I think that's part of what a continuance is to seek a resolution as to how this project works. And this board can only be concerned as far as what we are seeing on the pictures. We can't be so concerned about the internal dealings of a project. We definitely want to accommodate any comments back and forth, but at this time, this is a key project in a landmark district. This is a very serious historic structure in a landmark neighborhood that is very, very old, and it's in a prominent corner going into Ybor City, and I think we just need some more time. Everybody needs some more time to take a look at this from all sides and come up with the best determination.
Okay, let me get the sense of the commissioners on regarding the possibilities, or the possibilities that are presented before the commissioner, or the petitioner rather. I guess we would need to just put a motion out there and see how it floats. But
I have a question for legal, I guess. Is the last hearing, we got a preliminary approval for massing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit to give us understanding what entitlements that we do have now at this point? So for us, I'm just trying to establish, we're willing and want to work with the board and continue to make this a better project and understand the sensitivity of the historic nature. I'm just trying to figure out what rights we have from the last hearing to where we are headed. If it's architectural design and aesthetics.
I was going to say, I think, Ron, didn't you put up a thing as to what the motion was?
This was the language in the preliminary approval that was granted in December.
I mean, from that language, the building's not going to move. It's not going to change. We've discussed what we feel are some of the highlighted important features, which is the way that it connects to the building. There's a number of different points that we touched on with that. We talked about some scales and proportions and rhythms of windows. And Commissioner Vela brought up the parapet. Now, I think that some of these issues, I think that we all have concerns about, and others, I think, are your prerogative as a designer.
Yeah.
I guess I would put it to the board to see if we can come up with a motion that captures those and allows the petitioner to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can I speak? That, you know, part of this is the next step, which I think would help answer a lot of your questions, is to start engaging our structural engineer, our mechanical engineer. You know, I'm showing mechanical equipment on the roof, but really it's not sized yet. So we could be really arguing about or discussing, you know, the visibility of equipment, but yet, you know, it could be really small equipment because the mechanical engineer decides to use XYZ equipment. You know, we're right now in the design development with just the architect and the interior design kind of working together. You know, there's a lot of, you know, the structural system, the bay system, you know, so if, and I don't know if my client wants to engage in spending that kind of money to the next step if we can't move forward.
I think we understand that the project's going to have to evolve beyond where it is. We got to a point where we were comfortable last time with where it was, how it was situated, and the manner in which we were willing to discuss it touching the other building. We've gotten to that point. We've expressed some finer detailing. We've expressed some reservations about some of the decisions you've made as a designer. As chair, I can't make a motion, but would suggest that perhaps a motion could be crafted in such a way that passes a lot of these concerns to staff and allows them to work with the petitioner. If that's not the sense of the commission, then we can test that. But
Can I ask a question? Mr. Capitano.
Mr. Capitano.
You say you have a February 12th deadline.
We had a closing right after the last hearing, but they granted us one more extension to get to February. So my if we have the massing, if we have the entitlement for the connection and the massing, that makes me feel better, a little bit less risk. But I can't afford an up and down vote, and then we fail, and then we have to wait a year. That will kill the project.
Right.
The tenant has a occupancy date that we have to hit next year.
My question is to legal and staff. I'd be willing to show up at a special meeting prior to his deadline, if there is such a thing as a special meeting.
Well, there is. It's just a matter of scheduling, and it would, I think that you can look at the rules, but it would be for the chair to set it, but I don't know.
I would do it at night.
See what staff's
I would do it before
availability.
breakfast.
yeah,
We met. So yeah, it was.
What we're discussing is the potential notice issue. You know,
Right.
notice it
That was
on
my
the
first
record.
thought.
I mean, I think that it's important that although we have to evaluate the project for what has been granted and what has been presented today, that a lot of these things don't happen in a vacuum. You know, there's timing, there's energy, there's effort that is beyond our control and beyond our purview, but that we can be aware of. I think that we've seen the project move in a favorable direction from the first time we saw it to the iterations that were generated and then presented. I am of the opinion that I think it would continue to move towards success. We've expressed a number of different concerns that are major that I think we can capture, and that the petitioner can remedy and work with staff on. So,
Could I continue
please.
on what I'm thinking here? What would happen if we don't close today's meeting? And we schedule a week, 10 days, or whatever, to continue this meeting? And that might solve the notice problem.
Understand, we were thinking about that, but then again, we gotta try and schedule this
Right.
this room itself is in high demand. What we'd have to see if, when there's availability on the building,
I think
or on
it's-
the room.
I think it's worth pursuing.
Well, I just, let me offer a little 2 cents here. So we did a preliminary approval, and I think the consensus was for just a general size and massing, looking at the story size, like, or how many stories the structure has, and the overall, like, lengths and widths and heights. That is okay, based on a preliminary approval. So what we're getting into now is like fenestrations, facade design, clarification on a plan issue that we want to just ensure that if things were to go in a bad direction, that if we're looking at this building, we would have that break between the old and the new. So, I mean, at this point, I feel what the chair is saying is that I think this project is moving towards a more positive direction, but the fact remains that there's just a lot of gray area that just needs to be resolved. And I think once we get some clarification on that, I think then a determination can be met. I don't think it's going to be stepping back far into the picture. I think the bulk of what was presented back in January 22nd was palatable. That's just my thought based on being there and rereading this decision from the minutes.
Any other discussion regarding the?
Yeah, I think the elements that we want to see again.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I'm not positive that can be dealt with staff on.
Right.
I think it needs to come to us.
It needs to be. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we're continuing on items that are they are very meaningful. They're many, but they're not as big as what we all made a decision back in January 22nd. But I still believe that as our duty as a board, we need to continue this on and just resolve or work together in looking at these design tweaks and then make a determination, a final one from there on.
One more comment. Again, I'm not trying to be difficult, but for us to go from one hearing to the next, from advisement to staff, I mean, we've worked with staff, and I mean, I don't know how many times, even all the way up to Friday. So I asked and questioned, we want to get it right. We want to make, I'm not fighting for one way or the other. I agree. Some of the comments that I made today, I appreciate. The awning, definitely, there's some good comments, and we like those ideas. It's how to get it communicated to staff, so staff gets communicated to us, so that we can present it to y'all in the way that you want to see it. So it's not continuing to move in different directions. So that's my concern, and I don't know if you can answer that, but we're happy to continue to work with staff, but we need, make sure we got the direction correct.
Then let me ask you, when you say you're willing to continue to work with staff, does that mean you prefer the continuance? Or
No,
is that
well,
still...
I can't afford another year, right? So 30 days is going to be difficult enough, but if we have the massing and the connection, I think that probably makes us feel comfortable. But I think I was just told I still can't start marching down the path of city building department without the full CA. So I'm already at a challenge. So, and I understand that that's not the commission's issue. So I was hopeful that we met all and satisfied the needs of the board at this time. But if we haven't, then I can't afford a down vote, knowing that I think we're not far from getting an approval at some point here.
But I don't think we're voting it down. We just want to continue this.
Right.
I think
Well,
that's the concern.
just to clarify, it's just presenting that option,
Yeah.
up, down, or down, up vote, or continuance. And what it sounds like, if the applicant is open to a continuance, then I suggest that we do so.
Right.
I just had, I want to summarize just, I think, moving back the stair, I think we all agree that's a solution that's easily to implement. And cutting back.
Use the microphone, I'm sorry.
Moving back the stair, I think and so that connection's clear, transparent. I think that's a very easy, and a good comment. Cutting back the canopy so it doesn't extend past the existing building is a good and easy thing to implement, and whether we can study tying it back to the building or keeping the columns. I just want to get a feeling. I think the two biggest issues that the board, your two biggest concerns are, one is the fenestration. And the last time, I wanted to make sure that so when we come back, or, if the last time the windows did not relate too much to the existing building, and I think it seems to me that maybe what you're feeling is it swung too far towards trying to mimic something in the existing building. The other thing is the color of the glass and trying to find a clearer glass. And then the mechanical equipment, fine tuning how, where that's located. And the last thing was the connection of how the new glass meets the old building. One comment was to actually, cut through the existing building. That was a direction that we had very intentionally not gone down. But if the board could clarify some of those things, I think it would be really helpful so that whichever direction we go.
Before we proceed to clarify any of these things, I would just like to say that I think that we're getting into the gray area of designing something that meets in my opinion, meets the intent of the standard. We might not agree with exactly how that brick is there and that parapet. We might have some distinctions there between that, but in the overall sense of things, I would caution against designing the thing versus trying to make sure that the thing that has been presented meets the intent of the standards. And that's the challenge of an exciting and well done project, is that everybody wants to engage it, and then we start to engage it as architects and professionals at a level at which sometimes goes down a rabbit hole or two. And that's not a criticism, that's just a cautionary to all, so that we don't burden you unfairly, and we hold you to the standards that we need to evaluate the project on. So with that, I mean, do we have a motion that we want to consider? And the applicant will have an opportunity to agree to or disagree with the motion that is presented, and then it can be voted on.
I can begin that motion.
If you're suggesting that, see if someone has a motion for a continuance, we still don't, that's for the petitioner to ask for. I don't think we should be making any type of motion prematurely on that. Otherwise, it's
So there
an
has
up
to be
or
a
down
statement.
vote unless they request to continue.
Okay, so the next step would have to come from the petitioner if they don't want the up or down vote.
Correct. I mean, if they don't want the up or down vote, they should let you know. Otherwise, that's where you guys are at.
If it's pleasure of the board, I think we would like to request a continuance.
Okay.
Commissioners, as you form your motion, I think it's, in the best interest of this to hopefully be able to resolve at our next hearing, that you provide some direction to the applicant as to what you're hoping to see to bring the project into compliance with the guidelines. The next hearing is February 26, 2019, 9 a.m.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and present a motion of continuance. Just bear with me for right here. Move to grant a continuance in case BLC 19-21 for the property located at 2105 North Nebraska Avenue to the new hearing date of February 26 at the public hearing at 9 a.m. With this continuance, the board is looking to address the canopy to be scaled back, brought back away from the facade of the German American Club, so basically to not overlap or exceed that existing facade of the German American Club. With that said, we are looking at, bear with me here, to establish a parapet on the rear side of the applicant's building, which would be the east facing, to address the clarity between both the new and the old structures, so that the stair wall or the interior petition that's interlicking the stair tower will not be in the way. With that added, we would like to see an elevation of the door placement on that rear side. And looking into having a better or a more connective relationship between the existing fenestrations of the German American Club and the new fenestrations for the addition. This would be for all elevations of the new addition. And if there's any issues with additional pop-ups from the roof level due to mechanical, just generalize. It doesn't have to be engineer specific, but if there is a massive change in elevation on roof, that would be addressed. And then finally, for the glass, the glazing to be more clear than what was presented as a material item to this board.
We have a motion for a continuance with conditions or with clarifications. That made legal smile. Does the applicant understand the continuance and the clarifications that the board has provided in the motion?
We do.
Okay.
Wait,
We have a
hold on,
motion.
wait, one more question.
Fenestration.
The fenestration?
Just want to make sure we're clear on the comment about the fenestrations, because from the last hearing to this hearing, there was change and movement, but I'm not sure I'm clear on what we're supposed to do with them again, because
Is it just the positions, the horizontal, like the figure ground
So-
positions of the windows, or is it the?
To recap on that discussion, I believe it wasn't the horizontal relationship, it was more of the vertical
Okay.
relationship.
Okay.
So we can only offer so much, but that is kind of our concern. And so my motion is just to say, let's try to have a better relationship
Okay.
between what's there and any addition.
Does that clarification help?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that clarification need to be clarified into the motion? I think because the motions.
As long as the petitioner understands, some of these de-clarifications, I think that your motion for continuance.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Petitioners referred to it. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
Thank you. Motion carries. It's continued. Okay, you're in the hot seat. For the next case,
Definitely.
Mr. Mueller, I need to turn over the chairmanship role because we are involved in this project, so I need to recuse myself from it.
All right. You will then, and I'll make a copy of the form that needs to be filled out as you will, saying you're not gonna justify because, you're not gonna be able to vote or participate because of, I get it in yours to financial.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll get this, I'll get this to you, before you take it.
Thank you.
All right?
Yeah, it's yours.
Thank you, Commissioners. Moving to our last case is BLC 19-22 for the address of 2414 East 7th Avenue. Currently, there was some past action on this site. I made a copy of this as well. There was a contributing structure that came in front of this board on November 28th. For demolition was a request. That request was granted with the following motion. There were 2 bullet items attached to that. That the new construction come forward to make the best effort to recreate the original facade in terms of scale, massing, materials, and character defining features, including a parapet, and to have the archival information attached to that as well. And that will be part of this presentation moving forward. Just to recapture the site again. This is the Sanborn from 29 Property in question is highlighted in the green box. Currently, the historic structure is still there. It has not been removed at this time. This is on 7th Avenue. It's just east of 24th Street. There is an alley that runs to the rear of this project that will be hopefully used as part of this. The fabric was that there was the store that was there to accompany the neighborhood and a very urban environment as people would walk back and forth. Next to it was a boarding house that has been removed. So the footprint of what's coming forward is shaded in the green box here. Looking from above, once again, 7th Avenue, the alley that runs behind the property. As you move to the north, you have 8th Avenue, and then your cross streets that run north and south are 24th Street and 25th Street. The smaller box shows the footprint of the parcel with the historic structure, and then as you work your way to the west, there's the empty parcel. This is looking back at the historic structure that received approval for demolish, and then to the west, this is just looking a little closer at that structure. This is looking to the completion of the parcel that will be used as new construction as this request comes forward. This is the facade of the existing and shows how it's compromised and why the structure met the criteria for demolition. And this is the eastern facade. Just to the east, you have this contributing structure. Moving to the west, you have a non-contributing structure directly across the street. This is across 7th Avenue to the south. And then just a couple shots to look down 7th Avenue. This is towards the east. And back into the district towards 22nd. And this is looking to the west. At this time, Ms. Headland will address the board.
All right, good morning. All right, here you will see our site plan as originally submitted. Actually, there have been a few minor modifications since we submitted this on January 4th. We have shown the improvements to the parcel with a, let me back up. So the project proposed is an 11-unit residential 2.5-story structure, parking at grade, accessed from the improved alley from the 24th Street side. We have the required 11 spaces provided. There is one single unit at grade, and the original structure that Ron just went through, we have attempted to replicate that front facade as well as the east facade and use that as the primary entry for the residential units. Here, we were requested by transportation to set the entry, the vehicular entry back 24 feet. We've made those required modifications. However, we do still have 2 wing walls here that provide a TICO, an electrical closet TICO connection, and one of our egress stairs. In addition, we have a pedestrian entry at the western corner that is used with a gate entrance and is used primarily for the solid waste carts. And then again, this is that one residential unit. The single-family home located to the east here, and the other structures that Ron had for the parcel. Here's the existing site. You can see the 1-story block structure as it sits today. And this is our first floor plan. You can see, as discussed, storage around the outside, 2 egress stairs, the entry lobby, and again, solid waste. We do have a card reader here for vehicular access to the parking structure, and then the access to the residential unit is set back from the front facade, which is again trying to replicate or at least pay homage to what was originally there. Second and third stories are second and loft space. I'm showing these primarily to indicate the setbacks. We have the addition to where the original structure was set back just over 2 feet from that original facade. Another 7-foot setback is where our canopy structure, sunshade structure for the units begins, and then the exterior wall of the units is set back 15 feet from that front edge. Roof plan indicating we do have our mechanical units located on the roof over their associated residential units. We did take one street view, a wireframe street view from here, and we feel confident that you will not be able to see those mechanical units. They are residentially sized, so they are small. We feel confident you will not see them thanks to the parapet wall. Let's see. Can I shift this up and around? Running through the elevations, starting with the 7th Avenue facade, you can see the replication in mass and scale, in materials, the replication of the original building that's located on site. We have shown here a wood-clad aluminum window system with a wood-clad knee wall, wainscot knee wall, transom, again, wood-clad aluminum storefront system. Again, we're proposing a buff brick for the main element of that elevation, and precast balustrade system going back to what was there originally. Again, stepping back 2 feet, we have our ground floor addition, which is a residential unit. You see we've tried to replicate sort of the scale of that, and we have a single porch with two distinct entries and a metal sunshade structure. And again, as we get further into the presentation, I'll have cut sheets of these. And then a gate system, also again with that sunshade system at the top. Again, trying to pick up the datum line of the original transoms. You can see here the canopy system and then large aluminum storefront windows. It is the addition is cement plaster, smooth finish on block. And here at this east elevation, you can see our intent to, both in color and in texture of the stucco, provide reference to that original building that was there. We've tried to pick up from the original column lines and again with using a different texture of cement plaster and a different color. The alley facade is located on this side. We're proposing a black metal roll-up door, and I'll provide cut sheets in a little while, but and again, large aluminum storefront system, cement plaster. And one thing I failed to reference on the other, we do have banding and IFAS banding at the top to just bring the proportion and the scale down of that mass. Again, here you can see the western elevation. Again, that's at the property line, and we have that stepping back of the main structure. Typical building section, we are providing clerestory, but again, that's at the height of the parapet wall, so it won't be perceived from from grade, and here you can see the mechanical units and their placement. You can also see in this the step back of the exterior wall of the the ground floor residential unit. Our typical wall section, again, CMU, here's our metal sunshade system and that ground floor unit. A few 3D perspectives. Again, you can see the stepping back and the tiering, especially as it relates to 7th Avenue and the residential fabric that continues to the east and to the north of this property. You can see on the alley side how the access to the vehicular drive has been pushed back, and again should allow for that 24-foot of clearance required by transportation. And then some material samples and some a color perspective. You can see the original building as it was with the clay tile, with the brick. That brick was originally was painted, and we believe the original color of it, based on the interior and what we can see from the backside, and we believe it was a buff color brick. We're willing to work with staff. We'd like to match what was there originally, and that buff color brick, and get as close to that as possible. I have some cut sheets on what we think it's close to, but again, without getting, we'd like the opportunity to really get in there and work with staff to find the right brick for that. Two varying textures. The fine finish for the new building, for the existing. And for the existing, the rougher, which is more compatible with what is there now on every facade except that 7th Avenue location. Again, period tile at this entry vestibule, and like I said, we anticipate, or we propose using wood-clad aluminum storefront system, similar to what's been approved in several other locations along 7th Avenue. For the ground floor residential unit, we are proposing a dark double-hung wood, aluminum-clad wood window and a 2-panel door, and then on the upper stories, the aluminum storefront system. These are some depictions of the sunshade system. It is an aluminum sunshade system that comes in a variety of colors. We're proposing to work with the window system and the color for that, but to pick up the banding and the delineation from the original transoms. And again, the metal gate would be something similar. That metal gate is pushed back, so when it opens, it's obviously still all within the property. What else do we have? We are proposing 5E metal, 5E crimp metal roof for the canopy system here, and again, an aluminum, and a steel system that goes back into the CMU structure. Again, some hardware, some lighting options. I think that concludes my overall presentation.
Thank you.
Commissioners, this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines, taking into consideration the past action for the historic structure that received demolition. That should be factored into the discussion as it moves forward. Some of the additional bullet items that we had listed here for your guidance is the location of the mechanicals needs sensitive approach. She provided the information with a roof plan showing the location of those, and staff feels that it met our criteria at this point through the design phase. There are some concerns with the mobility of the vehicle coming down the alley. There's some obstructions in this alley. Currently, there is a partition on the western portion as you enter the alley. There is a property owner that owns both to the north and the south of that alley that has taken ownership, and it's currently under violation, and we're in discussion for him to remove that fence so that this project can move forward. I do have Mr. Marsh with Transportation here that has some concerns with the alley as well. As one of the bullet items that I have here, that the alley meet transportation's concerns, preservation's concerns, and natural resources concerns as it moves forward. It's still in the discussion phases. There's some trees in the alley that need to be removed, so natural resources will get involved with this. Preservation's interest here is that alleys can take on an asphalt material approach or concrete. We've done many on 4th and 5th Avenue in the heart of the residential components in Ybor City. The apron should always be either a brick or concrete as it leads into the throat of the alley. So we're looking for a little more information on the alley. And then we'll hear from transportation as well. Multiple wall sections. When she talks about recreating the historic structure there, or the restoration of that, she talks about a wood cladding. A lot of times when we hear wood cladding is that the wood is on the inside and then there's a vinyl and aluminum on the exterior. I believe it's Ms. Headland's concern here moving forward, so she has the most sensitive approach, is that the internal will be aluminum to get the coefficient that needed for permitting, and then they're going to clad it in a wood to be more sensitive to what was there. So I'd like for her to elaborate on that as well. Color and brick samples. She had submitted an example of a brick. I think further review is needed on that, and with a complete color palette. There was some discussion with the size of the structure that might have to be sprinkled. And I think that the jury is still out on that. She's working with some plans examiners right now. But if it does have to be sprinkled, where is she going to put the vertical piping, the backflow preventers? And she did touch upon where the TICO connection is off the alley, so that's the most sensitive location for TICO. And then the mailboxes. I believe that the recreation of the store is going to be the central entrance for all the units, and I believe the mailboxes are going to be in there. Discussing automobile storage off the alley, whatever material that is, the alley becomes, there's a transition between the alley and the gate that's there. Is it going to be secure? Is there going to be a gate on the alley, or is there only going to be a gate where the automobile storage is at? And then she addressed the material palette. She went through that, and I believe that was adequate. So I touched upon a couple of items here. I have Mr. Marsh that's going to address the commission at this time.
John Marsh, Transportation Planning. After the last design review committee meeting with the applicant's representative, we had asked for a new site plan. The site plan that was presented today, we have not had a chance to review. I did check on the computer record previous to the meeting. I didn't see it in there. The applicant did seem to address two of my objections. One was the insufficient 24-foot backup that seems to be addressed. I believe that was discussed at the DRC by moving the building back and doing the wing walls to allow visibility. So I'm not going to discuss those. The main objection, again, is the alley. Transportation finds the site plan consistent with Chapter 22.314 regarding site access. Transportation Division now would require the entire alley to be paved from 24th to 25th Street. We're requesting that the applicant submit an engineered plan of the alley from 24th to 25th prior to permitting and submit through the PLN process. This will allow there's a lot of technical hazards on this one. There are utilities, there's trees, there's obstructions. Our staff wasn't convinced that it's viable down the alley. We did report the violators to code enforcement who are obstructing the alley, which makes me less popular than ever before. But our opinion was that we could be wrong, but we didn't really see a solution other than coming off 7th. So we think it's very important that they go through this process to make sure that they can prove that they really do have access. So that was our recommendation.
Thank you. Any more public comment? I guess we don't have anything else, right, from the public?
Well, can I respond to some of Ron's points, because I failed in discussing the site plan to comment on a few of those items which we have addressed. We have called for. We are still, like Ron said, we're still not sure whether or not we'll need to fully sprinkler the building. We have provided for the sprinkler riser and the FDC connection here at this southwest corner of the building in the vicinity of the solid waste carts. And again, we are hoping that if we do need to provide it, we can provide it around the corner within the alcove so it's not highly visible from the 7th Avenue thoroughfare. Again, this apron, we're proposing for it to be concrete. The alley, that is the biggest question mark right now as we work with both transportation and natural resources. The trees to the east of here can become tricky, and you have the balancing act of, do you take out giant volunteer trees, or do you improve the, it's difficult, and it's gonna be a longer conversation. And then finally, I just wanted to clarify the window system called for here is it's a CGI aluminum window system. It's weepless. It's designed to be clad in wood, so it's historically appropriate. And again, the same here on those residential at grade. We are calling for an aluminum storefront system at the second and loft levels of the new addition, and that's a CGI 410 series, which has also been used on 7th Avenue new construction in the past.
Thank you. I'm gonna start with questions on my left.
Sure. Thanks for the presentation. I have a question on the area to the left, which I guess where you would have your refuse and your pedestrian opening. Is that gonna be the solid 2-panel door? Because I couldn't tell on.
No.
Okay.
No, it's a metal gate system. It'll be a custom fabricated metal gate system to match again with the rhythm of the transom sunscreens, the sunscreens that are in those locations at the new addition.
And then pretty much what you're showing here, it's all gonna just be painted black or a black color. Is that what?
For the sunshades and the doors and the gate system, and same with the rolling gate, the roll-up gate on the back, correct.
Okay, and then for your drainage on the canopy, is that gonna be internal, or how's that gonna be handled?
We're gonna have to internally drain this because we're attempting to build out the site. We're gonna have to vault and store water right below our parking, and so it'll be internally drained.
Okay. Was there any anticipated lighting, or is that just going to be within on the other side of the soffit?
So that's a great question. So we are proposing beadboard, and I thought I had it on here somewhere, perhaps I missed it. We are proposing beadboard in the soffit at this southeast corner.
Mm-hmm.
We do anticipate recessed lighting at that location.
Okay.
However, at the units, we are proposing 2 wall-mounted fixtures. I think it's the lower on the lower left side of this drawing, but we're welcome to continue that conversation with staff if necessary. So on the back side of on the alley side, I should say, of the structure, we do anticipate recessed lighting there for vehicular entry as well.
Okay, and then you're going to have just rooftop units. And that's going to be kind of more central to the roof plan, I guess, or where you're oriented at, and then, you don't really anticipate those going beyond the parapet greatly.
No, so we had that roof plan, and
I was trying to remember. Yeah.
We tried really hard to ensure that when you're standing, 2 parcels down and you're looking up, or you're in the middle of 7th, that you aren't able to see them. We've done a bunch of tests, and it appears as long as we stay back between 3 and 5 feet from that edge of parapet, we're fine, in large part because the parapet, and when I go to the building section, the parapet is almost as tall as the unit itself, so.
Right, okay. And then you were saying that you will have a light well, which I'm seeing here, and then that would be within the parapet height.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
If we can look at your floor plan, I just have a quick question on the garage side, so low ground floor. So there will be, as transportation was I guess, requesting that you would have a recess entry from the alley. And then I guess that's where your parking all starts. And then what's occurring on the sides, on those wings, looks like there's a stair to the left, and then what's happening on the right side? Is that just?
We have storage units, but at the outermost, that's gonna be where our electrical connection comes in.
Got it, okay, all right. And then just to clarify, you were anticipating, once you transition from the alley to the apron, that's gonna be concrete, and then would you just have like a pattern to that, or would it just be, in terms of like the pattern design of the concrete, do you have anything figured out on that yet? Or?
No.
Okay.
We'd be willing to work with staff to figure out what's there. It's a larger question of what we're doing with the alley in terms of improvement and material.
Okay, and then going to the front of the building, same plan. The little alcove entryway, I can't remember when we were looking at this, when we were reviewing a demo case, but was there any particular pattern in that alcove area, like in terms of once you get into that entryway?
In terms of what's existing, what's existing there now, there is not. And we looked for evidence of that. We couldn't find any, but that's not to say there was never period appropriate tile or period tile in place. We're suggesting going back with period appropriate tile of, and I believe I showed a sample of it on the first slide, but we're suggesting a sort of the mini mosaic tile, the hex tiles, and with some sort of banding.
Okay. The louvers that are there on the first level, or I guess the sunshade, excuse me, so how thick is that?
It's a masonry wall, so there'll be, the current system we've looked at is a 6-inch system.
Okay.
And it's set back a little bit more than 2 inches after cement plaster and all that from the face.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions. Sorry.
Good morning. This is very nice. It's what we need in Ybor City, and I commend your clients for doing it. I think that they're missing a glaring opportunity, though, here. And I think that the ground floor 7th Avenue apartment is going to be hard to rent. And I think that the lobby for the other apartments is a waste of space. And not my business, but I would suggest to your clients that you do 3 small retails, because we know that the 3 small retails will rent faster than the apartments. There's no shortage of tenants for those. And it would do a lot for that end of Ybor City and the neighborhood. Had they thought about that?
It's come up various times over the last year, to be honest. I know our owners are looking at that ground floor unit as their home away from home, and as they age, they don't want to have a second floor unit. So they've been eyeing that as their potential unit. The lobby space has come up as well, although I think, as we talked about almost a year ago, that this property has been in the family for some time, and I think they were going to look at that space not only for the mailboxes, but as an opportunity to put up vintage pictures and Tampa-centric items that they felt like were important to them and to Ybor. So I will definitely bring it up again, because the conversation continues.
It does.
So,
yeah, there's a big shortage of small retail spaces on 7th Avenue. That's all I have.
I have a couple of comments. I agree, like, it seems like the old commercial building is just to be used for the lobby of the whole complex. Seems like too large, right? It's just gonna be, like you said, mailboxes and reception. That's the idea of them.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's gonna be the reception of the hall for, that's all?
Correct.
Yeah. And what's the design intent behind replicating the arches on the 2 other, on the left of the building, on the?
Trying to keep the scale and the mass. broken up.
Do you think it's necessary?
I know it's, I'm representing a client, so.
Yeah, okay, so you came from a client.
They are very attached to that original, the original arched design component.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it helps your design. I think just, showcasing the old structure that it was there, replicating is enough. I don't think that element needs to be replicated, but that's just a design comment. Everything else looks pretty good, and I'm glad this project is moving forward.
Similar sentiment. I think it's a great project overall. I think there is, I would agree that with Ybor being such a mixed-use neighborhood, that the bottom floor would have so much more potential as commercial space, and the 3 arches could represent, the 3 bays for commercial spaces, which makes more sense to me as well. But I believe that's all the comments that have been spoken for me as well. So, thank you.
Do you want to address any forward comments at this time?
No, the only last item I wanted to address is, with the site plan, Ron had mentioned, whether or not there would be any gates in addition to what's shown, and the idea is no, there would not be any gates. It would be open to the alley. The only, enclosure would be that roll-up door to the vehicular entry. So I did want to clarify that.
Now, you need to improve the alley all the way from, up to your property from the east side?
What we're proposing is improving it, from the property to the west,
To
but
west.
what transportation's asking is we improve the entire block.
Everything.
Everything, and the hiccup there is some really significant trees that are located in that alley to our east. It makes for a balancing act of figuring out what's most important.
Thank you.
Oh, I just have one quick question, and I think you might already cover this. So the new, well, I guess the new portions, not the rebuilt portions, that's all going to be one color primarily, right? For like the facade color, because I think you were saying that there's going to be some cement on block, or so everything that we're seeing in white's going to be that color block, roughly.
Correct. So everything that's, let me use this. So this, where the original building was, we'll recreate the buff brick color, and then we'll go ahead and continue with a buff paint color at the side, and then everything else will be white.
White, okay. Thanks.
So we close the public hearing, and we can discuss any comments that you have. You can start.
I don't think I have any further comments to discuss.
Thank you. No, I think the project looks good, so I don't have any comments.
My only concern is that I think the louvers, I'm a little bit skeptical on that. I think we've seen some of those examples in newer buildings, but with this being tied to an old one, reconstructed of course, I'm wondering if it's actually necessary to have that type of louver and then have a metal screen door facing 7th Avenue. I think that for my own looking through like our design guidelines, I think it's something that we kind of move away from that previous era. So, but other than that, I think it's a very unique looking project. I think it does add some character on 7th, and I think at this point it's just making sure that the applicant does file coordination with materials with staff just to per their recommendation. So I almost feel that maybe the louver option, in my opinion, could be explored with staff, and maybe they can make a recommendation, a final on that, just for the applicant to maybe explore another possibility of not having that there, and maybe looking at having a different material for the door for the refuse area.
Any comments? No. Can we have a motion? I think we agree, it's consistent with the conditions, so approval.
So as a discussion point, I think we could do a final approval with conditions, but I just want to also add that While we do know that the applicant has to work with transportation, ultimately that decision relies on that applicant and the city. We can't make a rule on that, but what we can do is say that, as part of this record, of course, being written down and so forth, record, that the applicant is going to be addressing the apron concrete off the alley. So that's something that would be in our purview, but.
Does the transportation issue needs to be a condition if we do the motion?
No, that's gonna be going through actually the permitting and
Right.
the review.
Right, I just wanted to just bring that up only because, ultimately it's gonna lie on further channels with the city, and I think we're just looking at the building itself and how that relates to the urban historic fabric, so. So with that said, I was gonna suggest, we could do, an approval with conditions, with staff, as a discussion point. Is that, yeah, okay, all right. So with that said, I'll go ahead and,
Do we check with the applicant?
oh, yes.
You're okay with an approval conditions?
Well, they're gonna need to know what the conditions are, so we'll, just ask them again after the motion's provided.
Okay, so I'm going to present a final approval with conditions. So move to grant certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents, presented at this public hearing in BLC 19-22 for the property located at 2414 East 7th Avenue, with the following conditions. Based upon finding the fact this proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City guidelines in the city of Tampa for the following reasons, that the applicant has successfully tied this project in a vernacular way to other structures that are along 7th Avenue and that have been done before. There isn't any, from a sense of scale and massing, the project does meet that criteria. However, with our conditions, we feel that the applicant has to work with staff on materials, which includes the final color of the brick, which includes determination of the shading devices that are located in the 2 bays plus above the door facing 7th Avenue, and then also the metal door that's serving the refused area. And then to work with staff on any type of pattern for the apron to the garage. Just making sure I get my list here. Bear with me. And I think that completes my motion. Yeah. Okay.
Second? Oh, wait, approval
you're
first, yeah,
okay with
conditions.
And just a quick follow-up, Ms. Hedlund, you have the authority to go to approve the conditions?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we adjourn the meeting? Thank you.